You wake up to the sound of water dripping somewhere in the darkness, that slow, steady rhythm that might be soothing if you didn't know you were underground, beneath the Colosseum, in a cell that smells like wet stone and human fear, and something older, something that's soaked into the walls over years of use. The cold comes up through the floor, through the thin fabric they let you keep, and you pull your knees to your chest because warmth is something you have to create yourself now, something that won't be given. There are other women here. You can hear them breathing in the darkness, can hear someone praying in a whisper that's more breath than voice, and you recognize the words even though you can't see her face, can't reach out to touch her hand, because the chains don't allow that kind of comfort. They call you Christian now, not your name, just the category you belong to, the reason you're here, and you've noticed that the guards never look directly at you when they bring the water and stale bread. They look past you or through you, as if eye contact might make this harder, might remind them that you're human. You try to remember before, try to hold on to the memory of morning light coming through a window, the smell of bread baking in your neighbor's oven, the weight of your child's hand in yours, but those memories are becoming thin and dreamlike, less real than the stone against your back, and the sound of the crowd above you, that distant roar that never quite stops, that reminds you constantly of what's waiting. Someone nearby is crying, trying to muffle it, and you want to offer comfort, but you've learned that comfort here is dangerous, that connection makes the waiting worse, makes the inevitable harder to bear. The darkness is almost complete except for the thin line of light under the door, and you've been watching that light for hours or days. You've lost track, watching for the moment when it changes, when shadows move across it in a way that means they're coming. You feel the guards' eyes on you before you see them, that particular quality of attention that isn't about you as a person, but about you as material, as something that needs to be assessed for its usefulness in the arena, and when they finally open the cell door, the light is blinding after so long in darkness, and you can't see their faces, just shapes moving toward you with purpose. They check the chains around your wrists and ankles, not gently but efficiently, the way you might check equipment before use, and their hands are rough and impersonal, and you've stopped flinching because flinching suggests you still believe you have the right to bodily autonomy, still believe your comfort matters. There's a man in cleaner robes standing in the doorway, one of the organizers probably, and he's looking at you the way a butcher looks at livestock, evaluating not who you are, but how long you'll last, whether you'll provide adequate entertainment value, whether you'll scream or beg or give the crowd what they paid to see. You hear him say something to the guards about this one and durability, and you understand with perfect clarity that your body has been reduced to a calculation, to an estimate of how many minutes of spectacle you can provide before you stop being useful. They make you stand, make you walk a few steps so they can assess your physical condition, and you feel their eyes cataloging everything, your age, your strength, whether you look like someone who will break quickly or hold out long enough to make the show interesting. The iron of the chains has left marks on your skin, dark circles around your wrists and ankles, and you can smell yourself, that sour smell of fear sweat and unwashed skin, and you wonder if they can smell it too, if that's part of their assessment, whether your fear is the right kind of fear, the entertaining kind. One of the guards pushes you back down to the floor, not violently, but with the casual indifference you'd show to an object you're temporarily finished with, and you understand that you've lost the right to be treated as human, that somewhere between arrest and this moment you crossed a line where personhood ended and you became inventory.
You try to pray with the other women, but the guards interrupt, not always violently,
Sometimes they just laugh or make comments that turn something sacred into something they can mock. And you learn to pray silently, inside yourself, where they can't reach it or profane it. There's a young girl in the corner, maybe 16, and she keeps asking when her mother will come, when someone will explain that this is a mistake. And none of you have the heart to tell her that no one is coming, that the system doesn't make mistakes like that. It makes choices, and she was chosen for this the moment she refused to renounce her faith. You remember having family once, having people who knew your real name and your history and the small details that made you an individual. But they took that away when they arrested you, forbid any contact or messages, severed you completely from the world you used to inhabit. And now you exist in this strange liminal space where your past feels fictional and your future is measured in hours. Someone was taken yesterday, or maybe it was this morning. Time moves strangely here in the darkness. And she didn't come back, and no one spoke about it because speaking about it would make it real, would force you all to acknowledge what's waiting. You've started to forget things, small things at first, the exact color of your kitchen walls, the name of the street you lived on, and then larger things, the sound of your husband's voice, the face of your sister. And you catch yourself responding automatically when the guards call you Christian, not even pausing to remember that you had another name once, a name your mother gave you, a name that meant something in a world that no longer exists for you. The loneliness here isn't about being alone. You're surrounded by other women in the same situation. It's about being isolated inside your own fear, unable to share it or distribute it or find any relief from it. And you understand now that this isolation is intentional, that breaking you individually is easier than breaking you as a group, that the system has learned exactly how to destroy faith, not through argument or force, but through this slow, grinding separation from everything that made faith feel real. But if you think the darkness of the cells was the worst part, you haven't yet understood what happened when the iron gates opened and the sun burned your eyes. The sound hits you first when they open the gates, that massive roar of 50,000 voices making a noise that doesn't sound human, sounds more like the ocean or an avalanche, something natural and unstoppable. And the light is blinding after days in darkness, the sun so bright it feels like violence, like something designed to disorient and terrify. The sand under your bare feet is already hot, even though it's morning, and you can smell it, that particular smell of arena sand that's equal parts dust and old blood and animal waste, and beneath that, the smell of fresh blood, recent blood, from whatever spectacle happened before you were brought out. They've dressed you in a thin white tunic, something that will show blood clearly, that will make good visual contrast for the crowd, and you're aware of how exposed you are, how every part of this has been designed not just to kill you, but to humiliate you first, to strip away dignity before they strip away life. The crowd is chanting something you can't quite make out, probably don't want to make out, and you can see their faces in the lower seats, see them pointing and laughing and eating food like this is entertainment, like you're not a person standing here knowing you're about to die, but a performance they paid to watch. There are other women with you. You're not sure how many. Everything feels fragmented and unreal, but you can hear someone sobbing and someone else praying loudly, desperately, and you want to reach for their hands, but your own hands are shaking too hard. You hear a sound like metal scraping stone and realize they're opening the animal cages, and your body responds before your mind can process it, every muscle tensing, preparing for something it can't possibly prepare for. And the crowd gets louder, excited, anticipatory. You think about maintaining dignity, about not giving them the spectacle they want, about dying with faith intact. But you also think about how none of that matters, because Rome has already won, has already transformed your death into their entertainment, has already made it impossible for your martyrdom to mean anything beyond the minutes of amusement it provides to people who will go home afterward and eat dinner and forget you existed. And she wasn't the only one. This is what matters. This is what transforms personal tragedy into evidence of system, because what happened to her wasn't exception, wasn't anomaly. It was standard operating procedure for an empire that had learned how to turn faith into profit. There was a mother, Perpetua, they called her, though the name matters less than what she represented, what she lost, and when they arrested her, she was still nursing an infant. Still in that immediate postpartum state where your body isn't entirely your own because it's designed to sustain another life. They took the baby from her in the prison, wouldn't let her feed him or hold him or even know if he was alive. And her body didn't understand the separation, kept producing milk that had nowhere to go, that soaked through her clothes and caused physical pain that compounded the emotional devastation of being separated from her child. In the arena, she was still leaking milk. You could see the wet patches on the rough tunic they'd given her, and the crowd found this hilarious, pointed, and laughed at this visible evidence of motherhood being made grotesque, being turned into comedy. When they released the animals, she didn't run. Some accounts say she stood perfectly still, and whether that was courage or shock, or the paralysis that comes from grief too large to process, doesn't really matter, because the result was the same. The crowd didn't show mercy for her motherhood, didn't see her as someone's mother and feel compassion. They saw her as a better show than they'd expected, saw suffering that had multiple dimensions, physical and emotional, and they appreciated it the way you appreciate good craftsmanship, good entertainment value for their money. Her baby's name wasn't recorded, or if it was, the record didn't survive, which tells you everything about whose stories matter, whose lives are worth documenting. And she died knowing that her child would grow up without her, or wouldn't grow up at all, died with milk still in her breasts and her baby's cries still in her memory. The other one was younger, might have been a slave or just poor, someone whose name wasn't important enough to preserve, and she was scheduled between larger spectacles, between the famous martyrs and the animal hunts, just filler entertainment to keep the crowd engaged while they prepared the next big event. She died quickly, not because of mercy, but because of efficiency, because they had a schedule to maintain and couldn't afford to let minor executions drag on too long. And her death was almost administrative in its brevity, professional in its execution. They dragged her body out with the same hooks they used on animals, scraped fresh sand over the blood, and moved immediately to the next event. And the crowd barely registered her passing, might have been buying food or talking to neighbors when it happened, might not have even noticed that a human being had just ceased to exist 20 feet in front of them. No one recorded her name, no one wrote down her story. She exists in history only as a number, as one of the countless Christians executed during that period, and even that categorization strips away her individuality, makes her representative rather than person. The sand was cleaned so quickly, so efficiently, that within minutes there was no evidence she'd ever been there, no mark or stain or indication that a life had ended in that spot. And the arena moved on because that's what arenas do, that's what systems do. They process death and then erase the evidence and continue operating. And the only reason we know she existed at all is because someone kept records of how many Christians were killed, not their names or stories, just numbers, just inventory. She stands in the center of the arena and hears the gates opening. That sound of metal sliding on stone that she'll carry into whatever comes after this, and she smells the animal before she sees it, that wild, unwashed smell of something that's been kept hungry, kept angry, kept in conditions designed to make it vicious. The crowd is screaming for something, probably for her to run or to beg or to do anything that will make this more entertaining, but she chooses the only thing she still has control over, chooses to stay silent, to remain still, to refuse to perform the role they've assigned her. The sun is directly overhead now, burning down on her shoulders, and the sand is hot enough to hurt, but she barely notices because her entire awareness has contracted to this single moment, to the sound of the animal moving closer, and the knowledge that there's no escape and no rescue and no intervention coming. She thinks about prayer, but the words won't come, not because her faith has failed, but because her mind has moved beyond words, beyond articulation, into some space where there's only sensation and awareness, and the strange clarity that comes right before the end. The crowd's noise changes quality, and she knows without looking that they're disappointed, that her refusal to scream or beg has made this less satisfying than they wanted, has robbed them of the full spectacle they paid for, and there's a small victory in that, in denying them something even as they take everything else. The impact, when it comes, is faster than she expected, more violent, and there's a moment of pure physical sensation before the pain, before the darkness, before the end. And then she's aware of less, and then of nothing at all. They drag her body out with a metal hook that catches under her shoulder, the same hook they use for all the bodies, and her corpse is thrown into a pit outside the city walls, a mass grave that contains hundreds of bodies, Christians and criminals and animals all mixed together, covered with lime to speed decomposition and control the smell, and there's no marker, no name, no record of who she was or what she believed or why she died, just another body in a system that produces bodies at industrial scale. We visit the Colosseum now as tourists, stand in the same arena where she died, and take photographs with smiling faces, buy golden crucifixes from vendors outside who sell faith as souvenir, as aesthetic, as something beautiful and meaningful divorced from any understanding of what faith cost the people who actually lived it. The history books call them martyrs, which sounds noble and chosen and somehow glorious, but Rome called them entertainment, called them inventory, called them the cost of doing business in an empire that ran on spectacle and needed constant content to feed an audience that had developed a taste for watching people die. We've romanticized their deaths, turned them into saints and symbols and inspiring stories about faith triumphing over persecution, and in doing that we've erased the actual horror of what happened, the industrial efficiency of it, the casual cruelty, the way their suffering was consumed and forgotten and replaced by the next day's spectacle. The Colosseum still stands because we built it better than we built the prisons beneath it, because stone outlasts memory, because architecture survives longer than the screams that once filled it, and we've turned it into a monument to Roman engineering rather than a testament to Roman brutality. We still do this, still consume suffering as entertainment, still watch trauma unfold in real time and call it news or content or viral moments, still participate in systems that process human pain into profit and treat certain bodies as more expendable than others, and the main difference is that now we do it through screens instead of amphitheaters, with algorithms instead of animal handlers, but the basic mechanism remains the same. The sand remembers the names that the marble chose to forget.